Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Healing Connections podcast. I'm your host, Emmy Vadnais, and today we are talking about coaching for health and wellness with Hernando, who is passionate about complementary and integrative health. She has a master's degree in occupational therapy, a master's of business administration, and is currently pursuing her PhD in performance psychology. She holds several certifications, including sensory specialist, level III Reiki provider, self-talk speaker and trainer, life coach, and in chair yoga. Anna lives in a suburb of Dallas and currently consults for the Center for Cardiovascular Health, as well as owns and operates her private practice, Holistic Solutions, focusing on health and wellness promotion. Welcome, Anna. Thank you for being with me.
Hi, thanks, Emmy. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Absolutely. Well, Anna, I've just admired you for many years, and I think you just have the greatest background and just a great personality, very friendly, and you're just always such an inspiration and light to so many. We're both occupational therapists, and you bring so much to the table that way. And I know that you have a background in obviously occupational therapy, but also coaching. And coaching is sort of a hot topic these days. And I just thought we could take a little bit of time and talk, maybe start out with what do you feel coaching even is, or what is the coaching profession all about?
Well, just so most people know, even though there is the International Federation of Coaching, and there's entities that will say that you're certified, there is no one agreed upon institution that says this is exactly what it is. It's more along the lines of what it isn't.
Okay.
It's not therapy. It's not therapy. It's not treating. And so how I got into and sought out a life coaching certification was because I was under the false premise that I couldn't do coaching as an occupational therapist, that I needed to have another separate certification, which when I went back in, I think it was 2005, is when I went for my training. So 15 years ago, that's a long time. And I sat in this class, which I paid a lot of money for, because let's face it, most coaching certification programs are a lot of money. And I went to the program, and within the first day, I was like, I already know all of this stuff. It was what we do as occupational therapists. It just had a different perspective and a different approach, but it took all the knowledge, or it has all the knowledge that we already have, and we have more as occupational therapists. So I guess it would be kind of like the little foundations little class, right? But we have so much more to offer than that. But when I was sitting in the course, it was just like, I already know all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finished, of course, the certification because I'd already paid. And that was the other thing that I kind of noticed, not just in that one, but in many of them, it doesn't take much to become a coach. Like, there's no entry qualifications other than you got the time and you got the cash.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where I started there. But once I got in there, I was like, we do not need this. We do not need this.
So for those who might be listening who aren't occupational therapists or in healthcare, who are wondering, what is coaching? How could it help me? What does coaching do for somebody? And then, yes, let's talk a little bit more about how it's similar, because you and I are both passionate about how there's overlap and similarities with occupational therapy as the original life coach. But just if we can kind of just talk a little bit first about coaching, what does that do, or what does a session look like when someone is coaching somebody? What's the benefit of receiving that?
So most of us would like to say that we have fantastic support groups, that we don't have to invest in. We would all like to say that our family members are great coaches for us. But let's face it, when we're in personal relationships, they can kind of rub us the wrong way, or we might not be as welcoming to their suggestions, or they might not fully embrace what you have going for you. And so they might not be able to offer you a 360 outlook on what it is that you want to do. And let's just face it, some of us have support systems that are kind of anti-support systems. And so a coach is literally someone who is going to align with your goals and what your vision and what you want to do, and help you break down a path and a way of achieving it, but then also hold you accountable. I kind of think of, like, I think my mom was probably one of the greatest coaches, and it's almost like that when you're growing up, your parent will be like, okay, these are your chores, and then you complete these chores and you'll get this allowance, right? And if you don't, then this is the XYZ that happens. But for let's say that you can sweet talk your mom out of not implementing the punishment, or you can kind of work your magic and be like, oh, I can still get an ice cream, right? But your coach is going to hold you accountable, like, nope, this is what you said. This is where you're going to be. And if your goal or vision has changed, then let's change your plan and let's change your action steps. But this is what you said. And then having the part where you're paying, people value what they pay for because there's value in it. They see that. And so there's that level of accountability. It's like why most people, everybody can work out at home. Every person can exercise on their own, but yet look at how many people pay for a gym membership and then invest in a personal trainer. Why? Because you're handing money over, and somebody is saying, you paid me to tell you, get up, meet me here, and you're going to work out. And then there's the other part that's great is you have somebody who's absolutely going to celebrate those successes with you. They're not going to judge what it is that you want to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest part of it, is that there's no judgment. If you come to me and you tell me that, you want to create the next app for, music, I'm not going to be like, well, that's a ridiculous idea. Do you know how many apps are out there in the world? I'm going to say, okay, tell me your vision and how do you see it happening? And, so we'll get down to the nitty gritty, because there's too many people out there that are going to squash your ideas, but coaches will invest in you just like you're going to invest in them to help you get to what it is that you're wanting to achieve.
Right. And so in what areas of a person's life can a health or a life coach help them in? And maybe we could also differentiate, that language, right? We hear health coach or wellness coach or life coach. Let's just take a moment and talk about those terminologies for just a moment.
Yeah. So when you hear somebody say, well, I'm a health coach, usually they're just going to focus on, most of them are going to focus on your diet and losing weight. It's kind of a nice way to say that. But they're also going to look at, most of them are going to look at your mind and your body. That's where most are going to go in health. Okay. But then when you get to a wellness, now you're going to start to incorporate your soul component. So mind, body, and soul, you're going to get this whole nother spiritual level. And for me, life coaching is the same as wellness coaching. It's just what's going to be marketability and which is going to resonate more with people, because I call myself a wellness coach. But everything that I work on is helping you to improve your life. So it's really kind of what somebody identifies with themselves more as a coach, because it's just, they're all different buzzwords. I think first it came out with a life coach and everybody was like a life coach. And then I got into if everybody's a life coach, I really don't want somebody to help me redesign my whole entire life. I only want them to help me design this part. But make no mistake, whether you come to somebody for health or you come to somebody for business coaching, you're working on all aspects of your life, because your life, the external representation of your life is a direct representation of your internal life. And you cannot change the external manifestation or the way it looks externally unless you are changing internally.
Yes, well said. Your external life is a direct representation of your internal life. Yes, that's a very good quote. So basically, depending on the coach and maybe their background and even the lens they're coming from, but just generally speaking, a lot of them will probably help a person, I would imagine, with whatever the person is seeking out or they want support with. And it is nice. A coach can help with accountability and help with those goals and kind of mapping things out. One thing that does seem a little bit different with coaching and therapy, and maybe you could speak a little bit more about what the difference is between coaching and therapy, seems to be that with coaching, the coach is helping elicit the answers that the person probably already has within themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So usually what I tell, one of the biggest things for me is in therapy, and not everybody, of course, listening is a therapist. So when you go and you see a therapist, they're doing an assessment on you. They are doing it on you. They're assessing everything about you. And then they are writing up a plan of care of how they are going to treat the problems that they've identified. And they bring to you like, okay, these are the problems I identified. Do you concur, or how are they affecting you in your life? And they come up with a plan of care. And then they say, in order for us to rectify this, these are the goals that we will work on so that now you can do whatever it is that you're in, but on the problems that I identified. So that's more of a treatment approach. I'm treating a problem that they have. And coaching is as if I've given them that. They're coming to me and they're telling me, hey, here's what I want to do. And then I'm asking them, okay, what are the obstacles that you see that are coming in your way? What are the obstacles and the challenges that you see? And what are the workarounds that you can do? So it's kind of flipped. They're coming to me and they're giving me the problems and they're giving me the solutions. And I'm helping them facilitate their goals and holding them accountable. And I'm helping direct it by asking them the open-ended questions so they can arrive at their plan of care. So it's kind of almost like it's flipped, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's
And that's
what I
the
was told.
beauty of it, is that it's helping a person discover what's inside of them, but also, here we are dealing with a global pandemic and with COVID, and recognizing how with social distancing, how much we really do need and want each other. And so, it's not surprising that somebody would be seeking out a coach to help them to have that accountability and to have somebody assist them, much like a sports coach would do as well. Do you see parallels between a life or health coach and a sports coach?
Absolutely. Because again, what is the sports coach doing? And this is one of the things that you hear all the time, because sometimes you'll hear, well, people who can't do teach, right? Well, look how many Super Bowl winning football coaches are, and how many of them really played football, or how many of them actually went to the Super Bowl themselves, right? So it's not a matter of having to been an absolute player in the game, as long as you have everything that you need to be able to instill that in people. And it's really about that. It's connecting with people and getting them to see what's inside of them, which is the core very much of occupational therapy. Our whole foundation is set on empowering people through using occupations to direct their life and create the life that they are interested in living.
Well, and since you brought up occupational therapy, just for those who are listening, maybe just if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to just describe your definition of what OT is.
Yeah, so my definition of occupational therapy is that we are there to instill and help people. Everybody says with help people, but we focus on the occupation of being human. And an occupation is anything that occupies your time. So we're focused on the activities that you occupy your time as a human.
Exactly, and helping people to be as functional, would you say, in their lives as possible?
Yeah, and that's where most people think, like what's going on right now with the pandemic. You have a lot of people who have been deemed non-essential, right? So how do I now define myself if I've been defined by others as non-essential? What is my occupation moving forward? And did I have do I have the awareness that that job that I was going to, I really didn't like? So I'm going to go back because I need to have income. But now I've had this time to kind of start asking these questions, like, what do I desire in life? And can I make a change? Is it too late? How do I go about making the change? And then dealing with, whatever your group support group is going to be telling you, your support system is going to be telling you. But having that person in your corner say, yeah, this is a great time to do a life inventory and change direction, pivot. That's the most beautiful thing about being a human. People make fun of, not make fun of, but they always say things like, oh, you're scatterbrained or whatever, you change your mind too much. That's the beautiful thing about it. We can change our minds multiple times a day. think that's what was the big thing in Alice in Wonderland, right? Is how many possibilities can you imagine before breakfast?
I love that. And then make a longer list after that as well.
Right, doesn't even keep going.
So, so it sounds like coaching is something that could really benefit somebody if they're in a process of transition, or why would somebody go to a coach versus like a therapist, do you think? And then, we're talking about occupational therapy, which can be about recovery or rehabilitation, but it can also be about health, wellness, and prevention, wellness, even if somebody is, not dealing with a particular condition.
Right. So the difference between going to see, a licensed psychologist or a psychiatrist, well, first of all, psychiatrists will be one that will be prescribing, most cases prescribe some type of prescription medication to help somebody with their what they're dealing with. And psychologists do a lot of different tools and techniques. And what we do in occupational therapy is we focus on activities. What is an activity-based thing that you can do? And so what we bring to the coaching is actual activity. So you can sit here and talk and tell me what your plan is, and you can tell me what your vision is, and you can tell me, what your obstacles are, but I'm going to hold you to activities. What was the activity that you engaged in that created and shifted your change? And so that's the benefit about seeing an occupational therapist as a health and promotion coach, because we cross over the entire lifespan in our training. So whether you're, a young, I actually hired a coach for my son when he was in middle school, high school age, because he wasn't sure where he wanted to go, and he wasn't listening to mom, he wasn't listening to dad. And I thought, this is great. Let me hire a coach that will work with him and help him dive into things. And it was great. He read quite a, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And so he got into a lot, and so he created his life plan. And now after working with that coach, he was then receptive to working with me. And so then we laid out goals and obstacles. And by having that, and this, I'm going into this so that you can see with different ages, he was seeking out purpose in his life at a middle school age, at a high school age. And so what we got to was, what is something that you dream of doing? And it was his sophomore year in high school, and he wanted to put on a music festival his senior year in high school. Now, everybody else was like, well, that's ridiculous. You're only a sophomore in high school. And my response was, tell me what you need to make that happen. I don't know. Well, go find out and then come back. So we worked on it. And his senior year, after he graduated, he put on a music festival. He sold over 300 tickets, and he had a lineup of people, and he launched his little production company. And everybody was amazed that at 17 years of age, he put on a music festival. But he had been working on it for 2 years of constantly, what do I have to do next? And being held accountable. You said at this meeting you were going to have X, Y, and Z done. You're wasting my time. But we won't come across that way. I was a little tough on him. But the point is that as occupational therapists, we can go across your lifespan. So if you are in your 20s and you're like, I don't know if I could hire a life coach, we can help you see things that your goals and desires at 20. We can help you look at what that's going to look like when you are 60, 70, and 80, right? We can also do the same thing when you're in your 40s and your 50s, or even when you are in your senior years. One of my older clients was actually a physician, and he was starting a different component to his practice. And so we chatted a couple of times, and he was like, you know what? I really don't want to do this. I'm ready to buy my ranch and just kind of hang out. Why aren't you doing that? I don't know. So that's what he's doing now. So it's that whole thing of like, what's important to me, and how can I set up a plan to do that? Without, with still taking into considerations my roles. And that's the other part of occupational therapy. We look at our other life roles. So not just what you want to do for you, but how what you're doing is going to affect your role as a parent, as a spouse, as a friend, as a daughter or a son, as a minister, or whatever your employment is. So we look at not just you and your goals, but how that's going to play in your whole family dynamic or life dynamic.
Yeah, those are great examples. Thank you for sharing those. And really nice to see how it can help younger people too. It isn't just for adults. And, a person who is trained as a life or health coach or a wellness coach can certainly benefit a lot of people. But you and I happen to be occupational therapists. That's what really drew us together. And also that as occupational therapists, we bring so much to the table that maybe, no disrespect, there's a lot of great health and wellness coaches out there, but I think that we bring so much with our background and our education in kinesiology, neurobiology, anatomy, physiology, psychology, that activity analysis, the fact that we're able to break down even just somebody taking a drink of water and all of the biomechanics involved in the sensory system, and being able to understand how we can look at tasks and break them down and really chain them, forward and backward to help somebody be as successful as possible in their lives. And I know that when I was a new occupational therapist, when I would first greet the patients the people who I was working with, when I would tell them that I was an occupational therapist, they would give me a weird look on their face, and people still do today, which is why we're trying to talk about this and educate people. But I would often say, just think of me as like your life coach. And this was before life coach and health coaches were even a thing. That wasn't even really a profession. And still, even though it's become something that people can do, it's not recognized. There's no board certification or licensure for it. But I think that term can really help somebody understand, especially from that sports analogy, and recognizing how we can assist people. And I think that coaching is something that does dovetail really well with occupational therapy. And it is, as you and I both know, really another tool that we can use in our toolkit as occupational therapists. So that's why I think you and I are both advocates for people, if they are seeking out a coach, to consider somebody like an occupational therapist who has that confidence in using those skills. So is there anything more you'd like to add about that?
I think also we have a level of diversity that someone who is, and again, there are a lot of great coaches out there for sure, but someone who doesn't have occupational therapy in the background or as part of their repertoire, we have so much more to offer, in the fact that we've been in, most of us, right? I know you've been a therapist for many years. I've been a therapist for 23 years. We've seen a lot of different types of challenges. And so we have a whole lot more tools in our toolbox. I always tell people, when I came out of school, I had a simple toolbox of a screwdriver, a wrench, and a hammer. And now I feel like I own the Home Depot distribution center with a vast number of tools that I have. And the great news about it is that because we have so many tools, there's not one clear-cut answer for any one person. And as a coach, we're not going to say, hey, by the way, you need to use a screwdriver, because the whole point of coaching is having that person discover them. We're going to be more along the lines like, okay, what is the task that you're trying to complete? Have you thought of this tool or this tool or this tool or this tool? Okay, now what about this tool, or this tool? And so we're helping it that way, versus, hey, guess what? You've got this task. I've got a screwdriver and I've got a hammer. Which one you want, right? We have such an array of information and experiences that can really lead someone further along in their path. And, a big part of it as well is just knowing that we have at our very core, the mind, body, and spirit is really at our core of a foundation. And so whereas many other places might, you mentioned biomechanics, they might tell you, okay, you need to sit up straight, you need to do this, you need to do that. We go back to the emotional component of that and why that's happening, and where you might have some limiting beliefs. We get a lot of education on neuroplasticity, which is how the brain works and why we get stuck in habits and do what we do. And so again, we have a repertoire of tools to help people shift those limiting beliefs, change their perspective, and so that it now serves them, versus them being for lack of a better word, slave to their thoughts. We can teach them tools that can shift those thoughts, and then also come that in with reinforcing behaviors so that they're on a completely different path.
Yeah, well said. I love that you highlight the mind, body, spirit component, that holistic approach, which is foundational for both of our practices, and that this is something that can help in health, wellness, and prevention as well, would you say?
Absolutely. And I would say that because of, occupational therapist's background, I'm going to give you an example of a lady that I coached. She was she was sick, and the doctors basically said, yep, you've got something going on with you. We don't know what it is. We can't really find anything. And so her emotional state was becoming very depleted. And so then she started thinking, well, maybe I need some medication. I can't, maybe it's all in my head, and maybe it's all this. Now, coming from my background, I'm very much in psychosomatics, which means that I believe that there's an emotional body connection. And my premise is that one of my core beliefs is that our spirit and soul are speaking to us. And one of the greatest ways that it gets our attention is through our pain in our body. So, but with this lady, she came to me and she just didn't look well. Most people would say she's overweight. She looked swollen to me. And that comes from being an occupational therapist. I'm looking at her and I'm not seeing this as weight that she's got on. I'm looking at it as inflammation. She looks swollen to me. And so we just started with a very simple, let's talk about what's going on. And I'm tired. I can't eat this. This, and this. I'm not able to do that. Well, would you be willing to, let's just start with a general detox. And so we did a detox for 30 days. And then she became less swollen. And then we did it again for another 30 days. And this is where we went into habits on how do I read a label? How do I change my grocery store habits? How do I engage my family into these different types of meal preparations that I'm doing? Those types of things. And we worked on the emotional component. Like I said, we did some journaling, we did some meditation, we did some grounding, we did anxiety and coping skills. And these are all things that we learn for the most part in Foundation for Occupational Therapy. And after the 60 days, she had significantly lost weight, right? Because, lost weight is how everybody perceives it. But she had slendered and she was no more swollen. When she went back into the doctor, they were then able, because she still didn't feel great, they were then able to run the same test that they ran before, and they were able to see that she had a cut in her intestine, which was actually, she was septic. She was leaking into it. But because it was everywhere, her whole entire being was swollen, inflamed, the test couldn't yield anything. But once she was able to clear out her emotions around it and then clear out the toxicity in her body, they were able to locate what was wrong and then move forward. I don't believe that, or I don't think, and no disrespect, there are some great coaches, I don't feel that a typical wellness coach would be able to recognize that and implement the plan, and as well as send it to the doctors so that this woman's needs could really be addressed, because there was some medical stuff going on with her, but was not going to be addressed because they couldn't figure it out. And I was able to, through coaching, spend the one-on-one time with her, which, let's just face it, you don't get in most medical things. The doctor's not going to be able to sit with you for an hour once a week and send you text messages and emails. They're not going to do that really direct one-on-one. And that's the benefit of a coach, whether it's an occupational therapist or not. They're going to set aside that time, whether it be 30 minutes or an hour, and directly work with you so we can get to the underlining. The benefit of working with an occupational therapist as a coach is, like I said, we have so much more that we can maybe recognize, identify, and bring to the table through our experience and our formal education.
Yes, another great example. And I also love that component, and that's a big piece. And, you and I think have very similar practices of the mind, the consciousness, the mental, the beliefs, the emotions, all of those components. And yes, diet, makes a difference, as well as how much a person, their activity versus we think of having to do, but also rest is important, or things like meditation or prayer or stillness or leisure activities. Occupational therapists, we're really experts as well as helping people with leisure activities, but also to assist them to meet those functional goals that they're working toward in their lives. And I think also with healthcare, I think part of the popularity of coaching coming up is because, and there's also nutrition coaches, functional medicine coaches, there's a lot of different types, intuitive coaches, that they're, like you mentioned, with practitioners with the fast-paced healthcare system are not able to spend as much time individually with people. And a lot of this profession of coaches has really grown up because people are able to get that. They are able to get a partner who can assist them and cheer them on and support them. And also because our healthcare system has been very focused on sick care.
Yes.
And that we are, you and I and many other practitioners that we're networked and connected with, and a lot more people are waking up to wanting to have better health, and who want to also work with their own wellness and prevention. And we now know that I think the stats I've read as high as 80% of chronic healthcare conditions can be prevented through lifestyle choices and changes and how we live our lives. And so this is something that isn't always addressed when somebody's going through sick care, because often when a person, not always, but sometimes particularly if somebody has a chronic condition, and some people manage that well, and everybody's on a spectrum of where they are, with that. But oftentimes when somebody is to the point where they're getting help from a healthcare practitioner, sadly, it's often where their disease has progressed so much. And there is some evidence that some conditions like diabetes and even forms of heart disease and things like that. And we even know now that even somebody who's had a stroke, that things like yoga and yoga therapy can, and a lot of times, in addition to traditional rehab, can help a person recover where we used to think that they couldn't recover. So there's a lot really that's opened up with the field of coaching that has really helped the health and wellness field as well.
Absolutely. And I think when it gets to the big part is a lot of people, when you think of therapy, whether it be occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, a lot of people go right into the insurance pay model. They may immediately go into, well, is this going to be covered under my insurance? And I've seen a shift, definitely. And I think that's also why you see such a number of coaches, because people who really want to make the changes in their life, they realize that it's going to come at a different financial investment. And the traditional type of model, sick care, like as you mentioned it, is just that. You're sick and I'm going to take care of the sickness that you have right now. And that's typically what is covered with insurance. But when you get into the world of coaching, that's not going to be covered on your insurance. If you use an occupational therapy, some health savings accounts will cover it. So you have that avenue. But most of the time, it's going to be an investment in your health. And so what you've got is definitely looking at, people are more like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and make the financial investment, because I see that if I invest now in my health, I'm going to have a greater quality of life as I age. Because I used to give a wellness presentation many times, and I would tell people, make no mistake, you are going to live for a long time. And by long time, you're going to live into your 70s, 80s, and 90s, and some of you even 100. It's going to be that quality of that life that you are going to have at those ages that you need to be looking at. So you can either spend the money now on improving your habits and your behaviors and invest in your life so that that quality is better as you age, or you can invest it later in the costs of medicine. Because on average, somebody who has type 2 diabetes spends out of their own pocket $13,000 a year on insulin. On average, okay, in the United States. So if you're watching this elsewhere, that's United States numbers, okay? So if you know the majority of type 2 diabetic is a lifestyle diabetes, and you can adjust that through lifestyle changes and working with a coach, more along with an occupational therapist, or even someone who has their diabetic a nutritional certification, you can change that. So would you rather invest $13,000? And that's not how much a lot of coaches are. So just don't have a sticker shock, everybody. But if you could take $13,000 one year and invest that in changing your behaviors, and you're getting a plan and learning new foods and learning new behaviors and exercises and enjoying your life more, or for that one year, or continually invest $13,000 every year for insulin.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right, right. And hopefully our healthcare system will move toward where some of these things will be covered, the preventative aspects can be covered. But in the meantime, I agree, it is very much an investment. I used to be a manager at a holistic health and wellness center, and people would often talk about, well, I shouldn't say often, but sometimes people would mention how they couldn't afford it, or, but then when the doctor would really press them, like, where does your money go on the weekend, right? And we knew we do need to have leisure and go out and enjoy certain activities, going out on trips or going out to eat, or imbibing with certain spirits, all these come with a price tag, and you can rack up, easily several $100s in a weekend. And if you were to maybe cut that budget in half, and maybe take a few weeks of your life or a couple months of your life and reallocate that to working with a coach, that might be something that could be, like you say, better money, better spent. And not to mention, certainly, again, we need to enjoy and relax, but if we're enjoying too much with certain things that aren't always the healthiest for us, we could actually be very counterproductive in our health. And I think a lot of people, you and I being occupational therapists, having worked in healthcare, now you and I have worked in skilled nursing and transitional care in addition to hospitals and so forth. And we've seen, a lot of what can happen to people. And sometimes, people are going to have accidents, and some people have certain genetics, and certain things are going to happen. And we understand that for sure. But you can certainly mitigate a lot of that pain and suffering throughout your life, and to live, a more joyful, happy life. And so I think that's something that if you're on the fence, you might want to go ahead and get in touch with a coach. And obviously Anna and I are fans of OTs who do coaching. Anna, do you have any suggestions of how a person could locate a coach, or if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing your contact info if anybody would like to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So my website is www.drDoctorAna.net. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. That's all on there. I'm in doctoral studies for performance psychology. So just to let everyone know, I don't diagnose, I don't treat any disorders or anything like that. I view myself as an educational. I give a lot of education. I view that education is power, and I want to empower my clients to make the best educated choice and decisions for their lives and the lives that they are looking to create for themselves. So that's kind of my premise. But yep, you can go to my website. You can learn a little bit about me. You can send out a little contact me kind of form. I don't, and I know it's great practice, but by reaching out to me, I don't put you on any type of blast type of thing. That's just not my way. If you reach out to me, I'll definitely reach back out to you and typically address any questions that you might have. And I refer a lot of people. So if you reach out to me and there's something that I think you need a different type of person, or you get better outcomes from somebody else after we chat, I'll share that with you. But as far as looking for occupational therapists that are coaches, I would love to say there's definitely Emmy has a great website, the Holistic OT. You can search there because I think that's going to give you your best bet. Because to my knowledge, there isn't any other place where I can go and type in, I'm looking for an occupational therapist. They're going to give you a whole lot of occupational therapists in your area, but not one that's specifically going to be for coaching. Most of the time, if you type in your little Google, find an occupational therapist around here, you're going to find the type of occupational therapist that you would go to because you've got a hip rehab or shoulder rehabilitation, or you've had some type of medical situation where you need to have some intervention versus for holistic practices. So I would say definitely your holistic OT website is probably the best one to go to find one of us that are in the holistic realm and would happily address anybody's coaching concerns.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, holisticot.org. We have a practitioner directory, and we have almost a few hundred. Well, it's a community of several thousand occupational therapists, but we have some who have opted to become full members and have a practitioner listing, become full members with all the benefits and so forth. But I think that's, I appreciate you mentioning that, because you're right. A lot of the OTs there are very interested in practice, holistic health, wellness, prevention. It's also sometimes referred to as integrative health. And many of us, part of that community, have gone on to become certified in coaching. Now, it's interesting, you and I have a dichotomous story about coaching. Would you mind just sharing briefly about how you went to do some training for coaching, and then I'll share my experience?
Yeah, so I signed up for this life coaching program, and actually what it was is I was a very avid believer in neuroplasticity, still am, and how we can alter our thought processes, our brain mapping. And so I kind of went into this one gentleman's school of thought, and I still think he's great. And he was offering a life coaching, and I had to interview with him, and he's like, I invite you along. And $5,000 later, I was sitting in a group of his, 5 of his closest friends. And that's when I was like, this is everything that I already have, this skill set. I already have this knowledge base, and I already have this skill set. And so I realized I didn't need it. And so that's why I'm very vocal with my colleagues when they say I need to get a coaching certification. And I'm very vocal, because you do not need to get a coaching certification as an occupational therapist, because again, occupational therapists, we are nationally board certified. So if you are intrigued on that, you can go to NBCOT, look it up on the internet, and you can go, and it'll show you there are 6 different certificating boards, organizations that our National Board Certification Occupational Therapy test that we take aligns with their validity and reliability. In other words, we have this other stamp of approval saying, yes, this board is highly ethical, highly informative. These people, they pass this thing. They know exactly what they're doing. And so that's a high level, and it's a national board certification. And then in the individual states that the occupational therapist is in, we have a state licensing board that we have to hold ourselves accountable to as well. So to my knowledge, there isn't anything like that for coaches. I know in my state, I'm in Texas, there's nothing to be a coach. Anybody can say they're a coach for anything. But yet, as occupational therapists, we're held to 2 levels of scrutiny to ensure our professionalism and our ethical standards. So that's why I'm a very strong advocate of it's not needed. Occupational therapists have everything that we need to be coaches.
Yes. And I in discussions we've had previously, we sort of recognized how you and I both sought out certification in coaching. You've taken classes in it and have gotten certified in it. I probably about 10 years ago, my career path has been unconventional, right? Like holistic integrative health, what's formerly been known as complementary alternative medicine, has really grown a lot in the United States here in the last 5 to 10 years. But 20 years ago, I was probably one of the only healthcare practitioners I knew in the state of Minnesota who was really practicing it. And it's taken me a while, but now I understand how I can bring this in and use my occupational therapy license with it. But in that process, I thought, well, maybe I should go become a health coach. So I started taking some informational sessions, classes. And what I found was when they would do the demos, when they were guiding people in the coaching, I recognized I was already doing that with my clients. And I really recognized that as an occupational therapist, it was innate to what we do and how we're trained. So it is sort of interesting. It'd be interesting to see if any of the OT professional organizations would ever look at that component and really kind of expand how, that's something that's that's really innate to what we do as OTs. But there are a lot of coaches out there helping people in a lot of ways who aren't OTs, as we know. But in that process, I recognized that not only was I already helping people in that regard, but I'm also trained in intuition. And I train with the psychic, medium, and intuitive, have a background in Qigong and meditation and energy healing, which are, intuition is, something we all have. We all are intuitive. It's just not all of us listen to it, or some of us can be overwhelmed by it and need help with support with that. But what I recognized was that I was actually helping people connect with their intuition more deeply than what I was even learning in some of those info sessions on becoming certified as a health or wellness or life coach. So I opted to not become certified as a coach. And actually, you and I have teamed up, and we are offering a OT and coaching class, Skills and Confidence for OTs, as the original life coach on September 26th and 27th of this year, 2020. And we're doing that because we really recognized how that we do as OTs meet the International Coach Federation, the 11 core competencies, and that we recognize that many OTs just need a little mirror up to them, to be held up to them, to recognize that they are doing this. But also, things like powerful questioning and reflective and active listening, I think is something that some OTs could use a little bit more encouragement around and some guidelines around. So if there are any OTs, or if you know of any OTs you love in your life, definitely go to holisticot.org under classes, and you'll see the class there in the drop down. And so do, check that out if that's an interest for you. And Anna and I did a free info session. Was that last week, I believe? And so if you want that, just email me at emmy@emmyvadnais.com, and I'll be happy to send that to you, and let us know if you have any questions about that class. Well, Anna, this has been a delight to talk about this. It's so fun to see the trends happening in healthcare as we all aim and strive to serve people in all these unique ways as healthcare practitioners, either licensed or unlicensed. Is there anything else you would like to share about coaching for health and wellness today?
I would just really encourage people to ask a lot of questions and interview their coach before they select one. You want somebody who's going to align with you, and you don't want somebody who's going to just completely be like, oh yeah. You want somebody who's going to, kind of poke a little bit of your buttons, but do them in a constructive way. You don't want to have somebody who's rubbing you completely raw. You want to have this connection. You want to feel that they are, and I say feel, right, intuitively. You want to feel that they get you. Ask for references. Ask them, say, hey, do you have a couple of people that I can chat with? Go on their websites and look at their testimonials, because there are a lot of different types of coaches out there. And make no mistake, again, I think whatever you can get help with, if you're reaching out to improve your life, the better. Any co-contribution that can be done is always, I say everything always is working for the greater good. And so even when things are bad, they're working for the greater good. So if but as someone shopping as a consumer, ask questions, read through contracts. If you have somebody that is pressuring you to sign up right away, and they're telling you that the price is going to go up tomorrow, and this is an introductory offer, you kind of need to ask some questions on that. Because if they're genuinely invested in you, if they genuinely are invested in you and you making the gains and the progress that you're set out to do, they might have a price today, but they're going to honor the price, where it's not going to be some drastically kind of thing. But also ask them to go ahead and send you their contract and read through the contract. The contract, that's the other thing that's really different between therapy, treating, and coaching. Coaching puts together at the very beginning what's called a scope of work, a contract, a thing of expectations. What I'm going to bring to the table, what you're going to bring to the table. And in therapy, we don't do that. We just develop our plan of care, and it gets sent to the doctor, and we discuss it with our patient. But it's not, here's what I'm going to bring to the table, here's what you're going to bring to the table. So if you've ever been familiar with Montessori schoolwork, the Montessori actually has a contract with the children that says, this is what you're going to bring to the table, this is what I'm going to bring to the table. So that you want to make sure you have those clear definitions, because you're paying. And so you want to know what's included, what am I going to get? And if this isn't working, how do I get out of my contract if it's finds out that we're not a fit, right? So those are things that you need to look at when you're looking for a coach. Definitely ask, because integrity matters. It really does.
Yes, great advice. You want to feel good about the coach you're going to be working with, and they should be able to take time to answer any questions you have as well before you begin working with them, so that you have all of your questions answered and that you know that their background will meet what you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Well, Anna, this has been great, and thank you all for being with us. And Anna, thank you for joining me today and for sharing all of your wisdom and experience with everybody.
I mean, it's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Awesome. And I'm looking forward to our class in September, Anna. We've already got a fair amount of people joining. So, and this is something that, Anna and I put together because we recognize that a lot of coaching training can be very expensive. And so for occupational therapists, we're keeping the cost really low compared to what you might spend for, getting certification. And just for a couple of days, it's going to be 100% online. So do get in touch with Anna if you feel like you want some help with coaching at dranna.net. I'm also available as well at emmyvadnais.com, and please do visit holisticot.org if you would like. Thank you everybody for joining us. Bye for now. Be well. Namaste.